So thanks everybody for jumping on. For those of you, people are piling in right now. So for those of you, if you just want to tell me where you're from and what industry you work in or anything along those lines that will help make this conversation a little more interesting, please throw it in the chat window. Love to hear from you. It's always good to get an understanding of who I'm speaking with. If you don't want to, that's fine too. That's a great thing about a webinar is you can be anonymous, get all the information you want, and then run away. So hopefully you get the information today that you need in order to be successful, because this is, in fact, an important topic. And it's been a topic that I think we have ignored as marketers for just far too long. So like I said, hopefully today you guys will see a path forward for you here. But we're going to get started probably at 12:01. I'm going to give a few more people the opportunity to log in. I know that the way this works, I know I'm not exactly the best at logging into webinars on time. So we'll just give another minute and then we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. We have people coming in fast and furious now. So what I will say is that we're going to get started in just one more minute, just to allow a couple more people to get on, and we will be underway. But thank you all for attending today. It's a very interesting topic. All right, it is 12:01, and I'm sure that there will be people that will be streaming in. Yep, just as I said that, two more people joined. So thank you all for attending today. We are going to be talking about ROI and business value at a very detailed level, right down to the calculations and formulas you need to use in order to get there. But we're also going to be talking a little bit about the things you need to do prior to even calculating your ROI. And then after you've calculated your ROI, how do you pitch that to the other business leaders, whether that be your board, your CEO, your CFO, your executive team? How do you convey this in a way that's consumable for them so that they understand what the true value of marketing is? And this has really been our fundamental problem as a function for a long time. I date all the way back when you couldn't even tell anything. We had hoped that people would use a code when they called in to let us know that they saw a direct mail piece. Now in the electronic age, we can actually track a lot of this stuff. But we still, for some reason, come up a little bit lame and short on really what the value is, and telling people what opportunities are or leads. Unfortunately, other than maybe the head of sales, no one really knows what the value of those are. They don't know what the value is at the CFO level, at the CEO level, especially if they've never been involved in marketing in any way, shape, or form. So you're trying to justify millions of dollars worth of spend off of a concept that they have very little understanding of. So we're going to go into this in depth today. So just as far as who am I, as you saw, I'm Scott Tadaro. I'm the CMO and co-founder of Plana. We build a marketing planning and budgeting software. But my background is pretty deep in marketing. I've spent my almost entire life, adult life, in marketing. At 18 years old, I majored in marketing and went right through. So got an MBA in it, been doing it for 29 years, learned it from the ground floor up, done both B2B and B2C, 7-time CMO, head of marketing for the companies that I was the head of marketing for, had successful exits, as high as $2.8 billion. And I also used to teach it at the University of Massachusetts for 4 years. and I'm the co-author of the book, The Next CMO. A lot of the concepts we'll discuss today as far as ROI goes are in this book. So it is free for you, all of the attendees on the call today. You can go up to planet.com and there is a banner at the top that says get the book for free, or Kelsey will put the link in it and you can download the book, and hopefully you'll get some good tips and tricks in it. So there's a lot of things in there, that from goal setting all the way through to planning and budgeting, as well as ROI. So what are we going to cover in this webinar? We're going to go through a lot of content really quickly. We'll provide you with the deck later on if you want to see it. We're going to talk about goals, because you need to set up your goals in order to calculate your ROI accurately. We're going to talk about how it relates to your marketing plan. And then we're actually going to go through the detail of calculating your ROI and business value. And then lastly, once you have it calculated, how we're going to actually show that to the executives that need to see it in order to have confidence that the money was well spent, and hopefully give you more money in order to drive the business in the future. So, one of the big things that has always plagued marketers is that we just don't know what the true result of the marketing is. We try, we may turn around and say, well, we can track it all the way down to the revenue level. This was a marketing source lead that ended up converting, and this is the dollar amount associated with it. And that's good, right? I mean, a lot of people inside the organization will see the value of that, but your CFO doesn't think in terms like that. They're thinking in terms of profit. They're thinking in terms of gross margin. They're thinking in terms of, contribution margin. They're thinking in terms of lifetime value. We're not conveying any of those numbers. And as a result of not conveying those numbers, it's still nebulous as to really what the value of marketing was. And sometimes we don't even measure the budget that we've applied to it properly, because we forget, or we don't have budget tools that actually connect with the marketing that we did. And so when we don't measure the business value, we find ourselves in a lot of hot water. And what we primarily want to do by calculating ROI and business value is, first and foremost, be able to make better business decisions. Because the better decisions that you make, obviously, you're just going to have more success. But there's a ripple effect associated with that. Once you start making better decisions and the outcomes are apparent, then you're going to get more trust. There's a stat out there that I read about 6 months ago that only 24% of CEOs trust their CMO. And it's primarily because they can't tell them in business terms what the marketing really was worth to the business. They just know if they shut the marketing off, things go south. So they got to keep doing it, give you a certain amount of money based on whatever the percentage is, based on whatever the averages are that have been calculated over time for your specific industry. But there's not a lot of trust there if you can't convey it in business terms. As a result, you're not going to get the budget you want. And then at the end of the day, either you're going to feel like you can't win and you're going to leave, or they're going to push you out. So if you are a CMO on this call, I'm sure I feel your pain. You last an average of 1 year, 6 months. I'm still a CMO. I feel it every single day, right? And so the only thing that will set you free is having a full understanding of where your marketing is contributing. Okay. So one of the things that I get asked a lot is when it comes to ROI, well, what if I calculate my ROI and it's not positive? Because that can happen, right? You actually could spend more money than value that you're bringing back to the organization, right? But here's the thing is, if you don't know whether you're successful or not, you will not be successful. If you know that you're unsuccessful, you can change. And that's the critical element here, is that if you do know the answers, and you don't have to share it with anyone, keep the answers to yourself, but make those adjustments so that the ROI does move in a positive direction. And then at that point, you can start to make those adjustments. But everybody on this call should want to know the truth. We want to know the truth in everything else in our life. Why not know the truth as to whether the work that we're doing is actually making an impact? So if we're going to be able to measure the ROI effectively, we really have to start with our goals and understanding how our goals affect how marketing impacts the business as a whole. So it's always best to start out with those company goals at the beginning of the year that need to be hit. if you look at those company goals, more than likely, a good number of them, marketing has a responsibility for helping to achieve. Okay. Then align your marketing goals to the company goals, then assign strategies to the marketing goals. So that's kind of that connective tissue and your approach for achieving a goal that will set up building out all your campaigns. Okay. Select your campaigns, and your campaigns have your target audience, and have a set of message you want to communicate across a variety of different channels in order to accomplish that primary goal. Okay. Leveraging the strategies. Okay. Do not start with your channels. We are going to have to look at channels because that's where the cost is coming in order to calculate the ROI. But I'm going to talk about why it's important to actually measure at the campaign level versus the channel level. And this will help set you free from, oh man, these channels I use are really expensive, but I know if I turn them off, I'm doomed, right? Or I have to use them because the free channels don't help me hit on my number. I need to expand into finding people in other places that could buy my product or my service. Okay, so we'll talk more about what that means in a minute. If you're not buying into the company goal, marketing goal thing, it's common. I'll show you a stat at the end of this that still makes my eyes bleed every time I look at it. Is that your company goals, if you look at your company goals here on the left, it's amazing how marketing can help achieve all of them. Now, obviously, marketing knows that they got to help with the sales goal. They know that they have to, push new products out, create awareness, create brand perception, these types of things. But it's amazing when you start spelling it out at the company level as to what we're going to do. It all funnels in. Even a goal like improved talent recruiting. Marketing has a huge role in that, because if you can create a brand image where people want to work for you, become a best places to work. Usually that's marketing's responsibility to work with some sort of publication in order to get it. Marketing has a role in all of this. So how does it lay out when we look at that goal element, and how does that tie in with shaping the rest of your marketing and your spend? And so I use a concept called goals pyramid. It's in the book. And primarily, you start with your company goal, you assign your qualitative goal that you're going to have for marketing, you set your metrics of achievement for that qualitative goal, and then you divvy those metrics of achievement out to either individuals on your team or functions inside your organization. Those functions will need to either work with other functions or own it completely. They need to come up with strategies. How am I going to achieve this goal? And in this case, in order to get opportunities, and then they're going to build either massive thematic campaigns, or they're going to have lots of little campaigns in order to achieve that goal. Like I said, everything is tied in together, up and down the line, so that as the metrics are coming in, it's funneling back up. Okay, so this pyramid will help you structure your thinking on the goals element. Now, as far as the campaigns themselves, I think it's the most overused word in marketing. If any of you have attended any of my other webinars, you've seen me rant on this particular term. Campaign used to mean something back 30 years ago. It was very specific. Now it can mean just sending an email out on a Tuesday, and we call it an email campaign. Why? Because that's what the email vendors call it, right? And that functionality was developed by engineers. They didn't know what to call it, so they said, marketers seem to use the word campaign a lot. Let's use it, right? It's not a campaign, right? So that is a channel. Email is a channel. We'll discuss what the difference is. But when you start building out your campaigns, you're starting with a goal, you're starting with a target audience, you're matching themes and messages that are relevant to that target audience. You're pushing that message out over and over again through multiple channels, and you have a specific measure of performance. Now, this measure of performance is how we're going to start looking at calculating our ROI. So now we're starting to get down to that level. One level deeper is the channels. Okay. Now, you'll be like, well, the channels are my campaigns. They shouldn't be. They may be. You may turn around and say LinkedIn is my campaign. I'm doing LinkedIn and I'm going to have all these different advertisements underneath it. C'est la vie. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But they're different. Channels are a pipe, right? They're to connect you with the audience that you want on the other side. And you choose the pipes that will help best connect you with those audiences. But no one cares about a pipe. People care about the water that flows through the pipe, right? That's what you need on the other side. And so that message to that target audience needs to be defined. That's defined in the campaigns. The channels will help execute it. Channels are incredibly important. The channels also are where the budget comes in. And the channels are a necessity in order to calculate the return on investment, because that's where the cost is. So I'm not saying the channels aren't important. I'm not saying you won't set up your marketing by channels. I'm just saying that they can work together to accomplish a bigger goal, right? Or be goal-based. Okay, there are lots of different channels out there. You select your channels based on reach, but you also have to think about cost per outcome, things along those lines. And this is where your ROI gets more complicated, right? If you're always going to measure on a channel level, you're going to have channels that are wildly large in ROI. Emails doesn't really cost you anything. Social doesn't really cost you much. So anything you get back as a win, a deal, a transaction, whether in B2C or B2B, the ROI is going to be wildly high. If you spend things that are more expensive, like doing a trade show or LinkedIn advertising or Facebook advertising or Google AdWords, whatever it is that you're spending money on, that ROI is probably going to be a lot lower than those other channels, just based on the X ratio on it. So there are different ways that we can look at what the true value creation is. And you've heard me use the term business value. I'll define it a little bit more in this discussion, and it will give you, I think that will help you structure your thinking about what you want to do as an organization. So you heard me talk about channels, you heard me talk about campaigns, you heard me talk about goals. And what I want to say is that we measure as marketers all over the place today. Today, we measure at the tactic level. I have a ebook that I created. I'm measuring the tactic. Okay, what I'm saying is that you should measure the tactic and you should measure the channel. But what you should do is break these channels up and these tactics to achieve a goal to a specific target audience with a specific message. And that all rolls up. Now, if you report at the campaign level, this is the perfect way to do it. Why? Because you have a specific target audience and message. What we're trying to figure out in marketing is, did that message work for that target audience in order for me to achieve the goal? Okay. And if you measure at the campaign level, I may have 2 free channels and 1 expensive channel. And when I calculate my ROI at the campaign level, it actually blends. So it's not a situation where if I'm doing everything through one channel that's completely inexpensive and one that costs a fortune, I'm not getting a true understanding. But if I'm measuring by the channel alone, I'm not getting a true understanding of who's buying and why. And I'm also not getting a true read on what the return was, right? Because I should be measuring it by the target audience or by the product that I'm trying to push out to a specific target audience or service, right? And then I want to take all of that campaign ROI and I want to roll that up, okay? I want to roll that all up to a top line level so you can see it at the marketing plan level, okay? Were some people having trouble seeing the screen? I just got a notification that some people may not have been able to see the screen. Sorry about that. Geez, I really got far into this presentation before that happened. We can see it. Okay, great. Thanks. All right, let's move on. All right, so what are the metrics of achievement? So the ones here on the left, we're measuring today, I think, with some level of competence, right? Impressions, contacts, whatever channels we're using, usually will kick out some sort of analytics data associated with. We may be detailed enough that we're integrated with a Salesforce or something else along those lines, where we're calculating transaction data, right? And so we know what the sales numbers are, we know the conversion rates are. I'm actually going to say that the numbers on the right are more important than the numbers on the left. Okay, and I don't, you'd have a hard time arguing against me. I will say that the sales number is very important, but I will say that actually the numbers on the right are what's going to drive your business overall. Okay, today we're not going to talk about cost per outcome because there are other systems that will calculate this for you. So if you get, your leads through, I say Google AdWords, you're getting your leads through Facebook or LinkedIn, they're calculating your costs per lead, right? So you're already getting that outcome-based metric. These two here go deeper, right? These go deeper down the rabbit hole, and they give you a true understanding. So return on investment is great because what it does is it takes into consideration your investment plus what your profit was, and it will give you an X ratio of what you were able to accomplish. Business value, this is a little different. This is the R in ROI. It's that profit that you're getting from the ROI, but it's in dollars or euros, whatever currency you're measuring in. And the wonderful thing is that it's apples to apples. The great thing about currency and money and dollars, however you want to phrase it, is that I can look at two things. And if this is $2 and this is $1, I know that $2 is worth more than one, right? And so this is why we look at both of these. I'm going to go into way more detail and explain what it means. So this is the eye bleed stat that I was mentioning at the beginning of this, right? Is that there's a thing called the Operational Marketing Index out there. We'll put the link in the chat window. You guys can all take it and see how well you stack up. It's a ranking system of 1 to 100. It'll give you a score how operationally sound you are on the marketing side, everything from goal setting, plan building, ROI tracking, budget management, whatever. All that stuff is in there. And the fascinating thing is the average score on a score 1 to 100 is 44. So already we're starting out in a bad place. There are thousands of people that have taken this. But look at this number. Only 26% of marketers allocate 60% or more of their budget to campaigns that support the goals. Let that sink in for a second. If you're not trying to support the goals of your company, you're already off to the wrong start, right? If you're not thinking about how to push the business, you're already wrong. We can calculate the ROI at the end, but a large percentage of your spend is already going to things that aren't going to move the company forward, not the stated goals that the whole company has agreed to try to accomplish over the course of the year. Okay, so this is why we're going to go through and discuss right now, determining what that business value is and the approach for doing it. But you got to understand a little bit more about your business and get more involved in it and figure out exactly how you contribute. Then we can start calculating these things as we go down the line. So let's think about ROI in these terms. Okay, the first thing, and I already spoiled the surprise in the last slide, which is looking at, do we want to calculate ROI or we want to calculate business value? I'll show you the formulas for both and how you get to the end result on it, but it is something that you'll need to think about, and it really should be a discussion between you and your finance team, your CEO, to figure out what they would like to see, because people look at different financial metrics differently. Okay, and then when you're determining the value, is it at a transaction? Is it an annual contract value? Is it lifetime value? We're going to go into lifetime value in more detail because when we talk about the truth setting you free, this will give you a superpower. Okay, and we'll talk more about that. And every single industry out there has lifetime value. Some people are like, well, we only sell certain things. So look, if you're on the B2C side and you're an auto dealer, you own an auto dealership, people are going to come back for service, right? So you're going to get that lifetime value. If you're on the B2B software side, you have subscriptions, right? I mean, even if you're selling suitcases, right? And people buy suitcases once every 15 years, they're still going to tell their friends that they love the suitcase, right? There are referrals that are going to help drive lifetime value. So we need to think about what is that transaction. We got to think about the sales cycles. So this is important for forecasting, right? We want to be able to forecast where we think we're going to end up from an ROI standpoint, from a business value standpoint, and this can be done. It can be done because we can, if you know what your conversion rates are and your average order sizes or deal size or transaction sizes, you can actually start to forecast what that return will be. Okay, because you're going to know your margin rate and other things along those lines. The finance team will give it to you if you ask them for it. They all have it. right? And you can calculate it very simply and easily. And we'll talk more about how to do that, right? So this is really important when you start out doing measurements. So if we start talking about measuring ROI, there are three primary ways that the finance team is going to measure your performance, right? And people talk about ROI three ways, right? There's the revenue ROI element, there's gross margin, there's contribution margin. Each one of them are different. I think a lot of marketers, if they are doing ROI, and they're not many, but if the few that are doing it are really doing it at a revenue level, because they can see what the transactions were and what the dollar value was and the marketing source. So what they'll do is they'll use the calculation to figure this out. The problem is that there are lots of other costs associated in the business. And this is not the way a finance team calculates ROI. So you'll go in and say, look at my gigantic ROI, and they'll be like, that's not the ROI. And you're going to lose credibility really fast. So what you need to ask the finance team is, are we looking at it on a gross margin level? Are we looking at a contribution margin level? I don't have EBITDA here, but that would be one that you want to add and figure out what that rate is. And that's the one that you're going to use. Okay. I have the gross margin here in blue, specifically because that's the most common way that people calculate it. And you're going to end up with numbers that look pretty snazzy. Okay. Versus contribution margin. We're adding a lot more cost to everything. And it doesn't look quite as dramatic. Okay. So then you can say, well, Scott, look, this sounds fantastic for transaction-based stuff, right? It sounds great for sales and everything else, but look, I have other responsibilities, right? I have awareness that I need to build. I need to create perception. There's lots of money that goes to those two goals that I may have, laid out. I may be on a CPG, a consumer packaged good company, loses track of their sales because they go to the retailer. They have no idea who the buyer is on the other side. All they know is how many orders were shipped directly to the retailer. So there are lots of characteristics that go into, really the consideration for hard to measure. But start with a specific measurement. So take awareness, right? This has always been something that we've struggled with, is that today you're still going to get people that are interested from the awareness that you do. There is going to be a value that you're going to get from the awareness you do, and say on social. Here's an example right here. So you get one inbound deal from social per month. Okay. You got 2,000 people that are following you right now. Well, if I jack it up to 4,000, could I estimate that would be 2? More than likely, yes. Right. So you would be able to calculate ROI or forecast that ROI off of the number of followers you have. Okay. If your awareness doesn't drive deals at all, does it increase your conversion rate? Right. So there are ways that we can look at measurement and improvement on performance that we actually can apply to other parts of the ROI that we're doing. Okay. And then the other thing that I point out here in pink is if you can't, if you have no assumptions as to how you're going to create business value for this, should you be doing it? Right? You really have to make that tough call. All right. Now, as I mentioned this before, you want to speak the language of your business. So how are things measured today? And there are lots of different ways that people are measuring their margin rate, as I mentioned before, and then the way that people discuss it, the health of their business, the CEO, the CFO. You want to be able to convey marketing's value in the terms that they're using today, because then it aligns. Okay, this is why I was saying if you go with a revenue-based ROI and they're calculating at the contribution margin level, you guys are way off, right? And you're just not going to see eye to eye, and you're going to lose credibility. And then I have down here the lifetime value. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail here because I got a whole slide on it. And this is really kind of a holy grail kind of thing that we'll go through. So you also have to look at the cost for everything. And this is where I think marketers make a lot of errors when they're starting to calculate their ROI, is they'll look at a specific expense and then look at the measurement and performance of it and try to calculate the ROI off of that. So here's an advertising example. A lot of times people will look at the media spend and then try to calculate the return on ad spend. Okay, that could be great, but what if you have production costs, creating the ad, do design work, right? You may use an outside writer to write the ads, right? There are other expenses that are associated with it, setup fees, management fees associated with it. And then also, if you really want to get, right down into the minutia, are there any internal labor costs that are associated? How does that break out? Now, I don't recommend, my personal opinion is, I don't recommend that you add in labor costs or anything else to your ROI that is campaign based, okay? Because that's kind of a cost of doing business. If you want to, at the end of the year, when you want to look at how do we do from a marketing standpoint on our overarching plan, and as a function, you want to add in those costs later on, which you can, then you can calculate either quarterly or annually what the ROI was that the whole marketing function contributed, and you can add in those headcount costs. It's much easier to do it at that point in time. So I think, one of the key things is, well, what do I measure? How do I look at this? What is the time frames that I'm measuring the ROI? And this is really the struggle that a lot of CMOs are going through today. Is it the value of the stuff that I closed last quarter that marketing may have influenced, and we get into this term influence all the time, or is it the value that I created from investments that I made last quarter? Right. And this is, I'm not going to tell you one way or the other is better. I do think, though, that there are merits to one versus the other. And you got to figure out what you're measuring today and how you can leverage those metrics potentially for calculating the ROI. So let's go into calculating the ROI. I know we got to get rolling here. We've got about 15 minutes left. So this is how you calculate your ROI. This is the equation for calculating your ROI. It's really this simple. Marketing ROI equals business value for marketing minus marketing investment divided by marketing investment. Okay, so anybody that's passed 8th grade math should be able to ace this. It's pretty straightforward, and you can calculate this in a spreadsheet. There's all kinds of ways that you can do it. Okay, ROI can be huge. Okay, especially if the cost, the investment is really low. Okay, if you're using a bunch of free channels and there's not a lot of costs there, and you're getting big upside in conversion, and then obviously transaction and profit margin, then that number can get huge. 99x, it could be higher, right? It also can go negative though. So, we have to make sure that we're being honest with ourselves, that we're putting all the costs in here so that we're seeing that what are we really getting out of this? And if it goes negative, there are two things you can do. You could stop doing it, or you could try to improve. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to scrap what you're doing. It just means that what you're doing and the way you did it didn't work. Okay, and you need to figure out how to make adjustments to it to get it to that level. All right, so let's take an example of calculating ROI. So let's say a campaign generates 200,000. Okay, what is the ROI? 100,000 in revenue. What profit? I'm sorry, and what is the ROI on it? Okay, so I have my media costs were 50,000. I got 200,000 one-time services. So I literally take my $50,000, which is my investment, and my $200,000 worth of revenue that I got in, and I take and I divide these out, and that gives me a 3x multiple. Okay, this is a good. People always ask, well, what's a good ROI? Okay, for this example that is revenue based, okay, this is a good ROI. 3x or better on a revenue from a revenue standpoint is pretty good. Okay, well, let's change the equation here. All right, so let's run the same campaign. We still got the same results here of the $200,000 worth of revenue that we got, and now we start adding in the additional costs that were associated with it. It's not just my media spend now. What were the production, creative costs, other expenses? Actually, the real spend was $75,000. Okay. Now we also need to take the revenue number and we need to multiply it by our profit margin. In this case, it's gross margin at 60%. So that's 120,000. So you see how the numbers change here. And we have 120,000. We got 75 as our total investment here. And the number comes out to 0.6x. Well, geez, that stinks. I mean, here we got a 3x. But here's the thing, this is right and this is wrong. And honestly, if you said to head of finance that understands this, that we got a 0.6x ROI from a gross margin rate, they would applaud you. This is actually a very good number. Okay, once you start adding in all the expenses for doing these things, if you have a positive ROI, it was positive. Okay, it was good. You know, if you're calculating here, who knows, right? We're not really sure. Okay, so then once we've calculated our campaigns and everything else, now we can start to roll up those campaigns into what we call our return on marketing plan, or ROMP. And so basically, it's the aggregation of all of these campaigns, but you need to start adding in at that level 2 other elements, right? Obviously, all the infrastructure costs. So, you know, your spend on, you know, technology, you know, that may be in there, swag that doesn't get into these campaigns, other things that you throw in there. And you may want to add the people costs. You use the same formula that you were using before, and this will help you calculate your overarching plan. But what happens? But you know, what happens if you know, this all isn't working out on a campaign level? I don't really see the value. Yeah, I get it. Okay, sometimes you'll run into certain things where you think the numbers are better than they are, or it's not a true understanding of it. And this is where I implore you to take a closer look at the numbers. And we're going to talk about business value in 1 second. And this is the example I'm going to use for it. Okay, so campaign 1, we got a 5x ROI. Campaign 2, we got a 0.6x ROI. I think everybody on the planet would turn around and say the 5x ROI was the better campaign. Is that the right answer? No, it depends, right? And it depends because we don't know what the spend was, right? It could have been very low or very high, and we don't know what the dollar value was on the other side, which is why we look at this term called business value. And I'm going to show you how to calculate this. And this is a better way to measure the real performance of your marketing. Okay, so we take the same scenario that we had. We got a 5x on campaign 1, we got a 0.6x on campaign 2, but the business value on campaign 1 was only $5,000. We only invested $1,000 in this thing. And on the other one, we have $500,000 worth of business value. I don't know about you, but if somebody laid 2 piles of money and one was 5,000, the other one was 500,000, I'd snap up the 500,000. Here's the great thing. It doesn't matter, okay, about X's and whether you, if you can show these numbers, these are dollars, these are real profit dollars. Everybody at the company understands this. And it's an apples to apples comparison against all of your marketing. This is why when we get into 2x, 3x, which is better, which isn't, it's an inexact science. It's helpful, but being able to calculate the business value, that profit in dollars, is really the true measurement. Now, what do you need in order to do this? Okay, you need 3 primary things. You need your budget, and it needs to be accurate. You need to set up your campaigns with specific goals and be able to track the metrics on it. If you have those 3 things, then you can calculate your business value. So there are 5 steps for calculating your business value. The first thing is choose a standardized way to express the value. Second, make sure you're measuring at the right level. We discussed this about campaigns. Examine your business conversion funnel. Okay, map each campaign to the appropriate phase of the funnel. And then lastly, calculate the lifetime value. And this is going to be a critical piece. So the first thing is standardize how you're going to express the value. It's always going to be, business value is always going to be expressed in terms of profit. You just have to find out which way you're expressing it. Could be, like I mentioned, talked about contribution gross margin level. It could be operating margin. It could be EBITDA. There are lots of different ways that your finance team is going to look at it based on the industry that you're in. You want to make sure that all of these metrics that you're going to be applying are trackable. Okay, and then you want to make sure that they're consistent. Okay, so you also want to make sure, we talked about measuring at the right level. I talked about campaigns, and that is a true way to look at things. And just remember that not every tactic that you do is measurable. Maybe not every single channel you use is measurable. But if they are, then this is a great way to roll it up into a campaign and structure it that way. But then you say, well, wait a second, I'm doing ads, like 20 different ads, using, I don't know, LinkedIn or something along those lines, right? But each one of those ads has a message to a specific audience. That's what you do in the segmentation for. Instead of reporting on all of it, take those ads and apply it to the right campaigns, to that specific target audience that you identified that you wanted to use for that specific channels. It is a true way of measuring the performance on it. We all have this funnel. It's been around since as long as I have, right? The key thing is you want to look at these conversion funnels and understand each one of the steps that goes through the funnel. You may have multiple funnels if you have multiple products, because there may be more steps to certain products than others, right? And you want to make sure that the funnel is logical and lines up with your business and is consistent for the metrics that you're tracking. So here's an example. You may run campaigns at different, that target different levels of the sales funnel, right? Or you may run campaigns to move people through the sales funnel. So an example here, I have a content campaign, pulls people into the awareness stage. I run a product campaign that moves people from the awareness to interest, okay? And here's my conversion rate as we're working through it. This will help us calculate these numbers that we need on the other side for business value. And the last thing that I'll point out here on the 5 steps is that if you can start to measure by LTV, the number that you calculate will be enormous. If you can keep a customer at the same rate or growing at a certain percentage year over year, and a high percentage of those customers, a marketing source lead going to the end to converting and then staying with you for a certain lifetime value, the number that marketing generated for value is going to be huge. But you know what, guys? That's actually the truth. The truth is that lifetime value. Marketing started it, marketing perpetuates it. Okay, and that number is legitimate, and every single executive will accept that number. Okay, and that's the one that will set you free. If you can calculate off a lifetime value, the truth will set you free. The number will be huge. People will say, we need to do more of this. This is going to help with exponential growth for our business. Okay, so let's talk about the calculation on it. So this is the formula down here. Campaign value equals outcome value times the number of outcomes. So here's a quick example of it. I have a campaign that delivered 100 sales at $5,000 in revenue per sale. I have a gross margin rate of 90%. So I have to multiply that 5,000 times 90%. I get $4,500. And I had 100 sales. So I multiply the 100 sales times the $4,500. It comes out to $450,000. Doesn't seem too hard here, right? Pretty simple math. I mean, this is almost like first grade math. But the great thing is that you have a pretty solid number, and it's nothing more wonderful than reporting your progress and your contribution in actual currency that the company reports on. So, but you say, oh, well, wait a second, I have a long sales cycle, right? How am I supposed to? Well, you can start to forecast it, and you can start to work your way back up through the process by understanding what the conversions are at each stage of the funnel, so that you can work out what the value is per lead. So if I have an 18-month sales cycle, okay, and I've got a bunch of leads in, because those come in fairly instantaneously when you're running a campaign, you can actually assign a value to it. What is it worth in revenue to me? If I got a big average deal size here, maybe a lead is worth $85. Every single lead is worth $85 worth of revenue. Okay, now I can start to forecast over the next 18 months, based on the number of leads that I created, based on its value that I have, what it will be. And this will help set you free for those people that are literally doing marketing this year to close the deals for next year. Okay, you can start to forecast that value. And if you're using the right percentages as they go through the process, they will be accepted by the finance team. Work with them on it, help them set those numbers for you. They should have all the conversion on their end. Okay, work with them, work with the sales team. They may have it on a B2B side, come up with those numbers, agree on it, and then you can start to report on this. And then that's pretty powerful, right? So you don't have to worry about, well, I don't have my transactions don't happen instantaneously for me like they do potentially on the B2C side, right? On a B2B long sales cycle, you can still forecast that value. All right. So we need to go talk to the executive team. How do we present these numbers? You know, this is the way that I would do it. You do it however you want, but because you'll know your boss is better, their understanding of finance, their understanding of marketing, the board. But always look at starting with top line plan performance. Okay. So look at what your overarching spend was for your campaigns, the business value that was created, and what that ROI is, and you can show both numbers. Okay. And you can look at it not only from what the campaigns generated, but what was your total plan. So we start adding in people costs, we start adding in the costs associated with tech that you purchase, swag, whatever it is, right? And all of that stuff aligns here. So you can show what those numbers are. These are pretty impressive numbers. Looks like you're going to be in good shape. You should also show your top line campaigns. Which were your top campaigns that performed the best? Okay, so I have these great campaigns here, but I'm going to challenge you to show the bottom campaigns, the ones that didn't work. And here's where you build trust with the executive team is, look, nothing in business always goes right. In fact, I would say that probably 40% of the stuff you do either is mediocre or poor performing, right? So being able to identify problems and being able to either adjust those problems or cut it out shows that you understand the business. You understand your function and that you are willing to make tough decisions. So if you plot these out on a chart and you show the ones that performed, the ones that didn't, it shows your aptitude for understanding where you're going as a company. And make sure that whenever you show these numbers, that you expose the assumptions, because they'll ask, well, how did you get to these numbers? If you're proactive in showing the assumptions, they will back off and they'll just nod their heads. They probably will get, fall on the floor because they've never seen these numbers out of a marketing team. And if you show this to them, and now that we're all talking, the whole executive team's now all speaking the same language as to what the value of marketing is, there's an understanding. And once you have that understanding, you can be more successful. So just a couple of keywords here when you're presenting to the executive team, like as I mentioned, be transparent. Prior to this, work out those assumptions with the finance team in advance. Then, show the numbers to the finance team and get the buy-in for it. Understand what people would think was an acceptable return, even before you do it. Like if people sit there and say, "Oh, I would have to say you need to get a 2x, or you need to get, a 0.5x, whatever it is that they see as an acceptable return." And that's what helps set your benchmarks. Okay. And like I said, if the math says don't do it, if the math says bad return, stop doing it or change. Okay. All right. So last thing I'm going to point out here is we have some free tools to help you do this. One of the things that's always great for those of you that haven't joined the Next CMO community, there's almost, I think we're up to, there's an old slide here, almost 2,000 members in the community. These are all either CMOs or people that aspire to be CMOs. We talk about different issues. You can put out questions for ROI. There's Ask an Expert up there. There's a whole bunch of, like over 70 podcasts up there, blog posts, other things to help you determine this. There are ebooks that you can use to get better at your job. So feel free to join it. Kelsey will dump in the chat window the link to the community. So it's free to join. There's no cost associated with it. And this was just started in September. So you can see how fast it's growing. And this has grown pretty much organically because frankly, I know as a marketing leader for a good chunk of my professional career, this is a hard job. Okay. I mentioned the book. I'm not going to go into more detail. Lots of stuff in here to help you build out your plan, calculate your ROI. It's all there in the book. We also came out with a new ebook that I think Kelsey will dump a link into the chat window for you. It's to how to validate the value of your marketing. This will help you calculate your business value. A lot of the points that I made in this discussion are contained in this ebook. And it's also available on our website if you want to take it under the section. I mentioned the operational marketing index. If you choose to go out and fill out the survey and get your score, you also have access to a 22-page best practices guide to help you improve. As you can see, we put out a lot of stuff here to help you. I mean, Peter Mahoney and I, when we started this company, started Planner, we did this to improve the profession because we're all struggling. We've been to too many CMO roundtables and just watched CMOs coming apart in these meetings because they haven't been able to be successful or they haven't been able to communicate their success. And that's the whole premise behind why we started the company and why we're so focused on making sure that we're giving you guys good quality, well thought out content to help you do your job better. So I am going to conclude at this point. I know that we've gone over time. Sorry, I had a lot to say. I try to do it as fast as I possibly could, but let's open it up to any questions. If you have questions, please dump them into the chat window. I'm happy to take them and answer them. I'll stay on as long as we need to answer everybody's questions. If I don't have an answer, I will find out for you and get back to you one way or the other. If you would like to ask me questions offline, you can reach me at scott@planner.com. Again, the book is the top banner on planner.com. If you want a demo of Planner because it calculates all your ROI and business value for you, you can get a demo at contact@planner.com, and we can show you exactly how we pull all your data together and calculate your ROI for you so that you'll be prepared to have that discussion with your executive team. So at this point in time, if there are any questions, please throw them into the chat window. I am happy to answer them.
First question, what is an example of marketing spending that isn't aligned with company goals?
It isn't aligned with company. Well, I'm going to actually flip that one around. Like, why? Well, what are you spending money on that isn't aligned with company goals? I mean, because you should look at each one of the functions inside. Like I said, even looking at something like hiring, right? People don't want to work at a company that they haven't heard of or that has no mojo or doesn't, I mean, marketing really has a responsibility in all of those things. I think you may be saying things like, well, I have a branding project and that's not a company goal, right? So I'm spending money on things like branding, or let's face it, you're spending money on swag. It's not a company goal, right? We need it. The salespeople want it. We're still, maybe someday we'll figure out what the exact value is of it, other than the fact that if you give somebody a gift, they feel more obligated to listen to you, right? So, yeah, so for that type of stuff, what I would do is I would calculate the ROI at the end of the year on it, and I would add those additional costs into your overarching return. You can roll, but what the other way to do it is to take all of those activities and either spread them across all your campaigns as a cost, because you can split the costs for those things across function. You can split them across campaigns. Or the other way to do it is if there are tactics, like you got swag, if you've got a campaign that has a trade show where you're giving it out, you put it in there, right? And so you can start to divvy out these costs and assign them either at the campaign level or at the end of the year, assign it to the overall marketing team. But like I said, if it's not accomplishing a company goal, you got to question why you're doing it. And this is actually a great way to stymie the CEO if you're getting beat up on this, is like if they say, well, we need to do this pet project that I have in marketing, you need to do it for me. And then just ask the question, which one of the company goals this is accomplishing?
Next question, would you please go back to the true ROI slide and review the calculation quickly?
The true ROI slide. Okay. I think where the true ROI slide is. Which one was that? This one? This one here, this calculation?
I believe
we'll give you the deck. If you're just like feeling like, oh man, we went through this. This is in the book. We'll give you the deck. So don't worry about all this stuff. We'll make available for you. Yeah, we're not gonna withhold information.
Next question, how would you recommend communicating ROI with leadership when your conversion rate is low due to product issues?
Oh, I feel for you. It's yeah, I've worked at companies where the product didn't work, and when it did, we were able to sell it, it got returned. So yeah, that is a tough one. That is a tough one. Well, I'm assuming, I'm hoping that the leadership is aware that there are product issues. Those should be bubbling up through your customer base, that there's a massive amount of thrash associated with either accepting the product because it's missing features, or buying it, or using the product because it's missing features or doesn't work properly, or other things along those lines. Yeah, that's a tough one. But like I said, if the executive team knows that, then you move into a different dynamic, right? Where even at this company here, there was a point in time where we came out with a new version of the product. It was the product. It didn't have any traction. It was going to take a while to build up the awareness. The one thing you can do, remember we talked about this, is we can assign a value to that awareness. Maybe not today, but maybe when that product does end up performing. One of the things that I always do when I go to companies to build up a database, right? Not because they're going to buy now, but if you can keep educating them over time, when the problem pops up and they see it, your messaging will hopefully connect with them at the right time. And that's where the value is. You're kind of doing pre-curved stuff. But remember, if you feel that you're going to be able to sell in 18 months because the functionality for the product will be there in 18 months, then you should use the model that I showed you for the business value that has an 18-month time horizon, and you can start to forecast out what that business value is going to be. Okay. And by the way, Planner does that for you. So if you put in all awareness-based goals and numbers, we can actually assign the values to it, what you think it will be in 18 months, and we can forecast out that value.
Next question, is digital a channel or a campaign?
Okay, you saw it on the thing. So digital can be a campaign if it's rolling up multiple digital channels, right? So you have a situation where you may be using social as a digital channel, email as a digital channel, and you may have digital marketers that are responsible for all of it. But each one of those channels that roll in, because digital is a concept, right? I don't digital somebody, but I may send something out over Twitter, right? So I think you're trying to see whether the term digital is actually a campaign. But what other questions do we have? Is that it?
There's a question on, is there confusion sometimes between marketing budget and sales budget due to lack of alignment?
I hope not. I've never had that confusion between sales and marketing budget. I mean, my assumption is that you have a CRO, and the CRO owns both budgets and is doling it out to both teams. I could have seen a situation like that. Or if marketing doesn't get a budget, it has to ask for everything that they do. And then the question is, where's it coming from? Or is this could be an issue with the finance team, where the finance team is actually assigning expenses into the wrong budget. But if you have a problem actually looking at an overarching budget, not knowing what's yours in marketing, I think you need to ask, and you need to push that really hard and say, hey, look, what is our discretionary spend here? Every other company on the planet breaks this out. I need to know what I have access to in order to try to calculate what I'm able to perform. And one of the things I will say on this is that, look, please, for the love of God, when you go into 2023, okay, if you happen to be calendar year, start building your budget before the finance team does. Then go back to them and say, this is what I need in order to accomplish the goals. Don't let the finance team give you the number, because now you're back solving your plan in order to hit the goals, maybe not with the right number that you need. Or maybe you don't need as big a number. Maybe you become incredibly efficient. But either way, take control over what you need in order to be successful. Because if you're backpedaling and you didn't get what you need, well, then you're already starting on a losing path, and it's going to frustrate you. Okay. Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sorry for going a little over. I know this was 45 minutes, but a lot of great questions from everyone. So thanks so much for your time today. And like I said, if you have any other needs, feel free to reach out to me directly at scott@planet.com. Or if you want to see how Planet can help you, feel free to go to contact, send an email to contact@planet.com, and we will hook you up with a demonstration of the product. So thanks again, everyone, and I look forward to working with you in the future.